Hi everyone, welcome back to Under the Hollywood Sign. I'm Faliex and this is my co-host Michel. Michel, how are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Okay, so today we've got a real treat for all puppetry enthusiasts out there because our guest is a puppeteer and a puppet builder with an impressive portfolio including work for Disney, Showtime, Universal, Comedy Central, MTV, the Jim Henson Company, Sesame Studios, and more. But he's also a passionate advocate for animal rights and is on a mission to change the world of puppetry by eliminating the use of real animal parts. And finally, he's currently developing a short musical puppet film called Kindness Town. And now, you're gonna see someone to present him. Hey, how are you? Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to the one and only Jess McKay!
All right, that's hey everybody, it's me, and I've got a puppet with me.
Cool!
All right. Hey, thanks, buddy.
That was such a great introduction.
You made it.
I think we have nothing else to say.
Yeah. That was it. It's been fun, folks. We'll see you next time. Thank you.
Yes. We had fun. I had fun.
All right, let's get started.
Okay, so Jess, thanks a lot to be here.
Yeah.
I'm very excited because I love puppets, so it's why.
it shows, you know.
Yes.
There's something fun about puppets is, a lot of the times people get around them and they turn into just little kids again. And it's like, I'm seeing what you were like when you were 10 years old.
Yeah,
It's
exactly. Yes. Yeah, it's remember a lot of things for me.
Wonderful.
Anyway. So, Michel.
Yeah, actually, you know what? That reminds me of what I was watching on Sundays, the puppet show in France, the Muppet Show. Remember?
Exactly.
It was always
Of
on
course,
Sundays.
I was
it was
fan.
a huge moment for us. Like
should know, of course.
we wouldn't miss it. It was impossible to miss that show.
Would they dub it into French?
Yes, of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah.
And with
Okay.
great actors, by the way. Some of the best French dubbers dubbed that show, and it was really, really, really good.
That's fun.
Really good. They don't do that stuff anymore, but yeah, it was really, really, really good.
Wow.
All right, let's get started. Rather than maybe ask a few questions, maybe we can show a trailer and comment over it.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
wheel of Jess. So, Jess, you can speak about it
Yeah,
Okay.
and explain
absolutely.
us some stuff. So, let's.
What did one ant say to the other ant? Nothing! We communicate through chemical signals!
Welcome
So,
to Made Up
that was Rembrandt.
Okay.
He's an ant. And what we're looking at right now is called Mind Show. This was a virtual reality digital puppetry system that was being developed, and this was a trailer that we recorded. And so each of these movements is being essentially recorded in real time by a puppeteer using a consumer grade VR system at home. Yeah.
Okay. So, it's in real.
Yeah, it's real time. It's super fun.
Wow.
This was for Sesame Studios. This is a character named Griff the Gamer Goat. So I built this puppet and performed it with my lovely wife Fanny Pierre as the assistant. So oftentimes puppet characters are going to have more than one puppeteer performing the same puppet at the same time.
Okay.
So generally one puppeteer or the lead puppeteer is going to do the head and the left arm for the puppet if you're a righty puppeteer.
Oh.
And the assistant is going to be doing the other arm. Trailer for a book called by Mary Roach, which is a really interesting science story. And here we have some puppets that I made for that. This was a YouTube short called, I think, a Muffalo Potato was the name of this. And this is Smashed Potato. So it was teaching kids how to be more mindful when you're crossing the street, kind of safety.
Oh, okay.
Here-
For education.
Yeah, we have a commercial here for TaylorMade, which is a golf brand. So we're going back and forth between the TaylorMade and the YouTube video. This was for Snapchat, and I made this a while back. This is kind of old, but I played this bird character for some Snapchat shorts that we were doing when they were showing original content on there. I didn't build the blue guy. Now this is fun. I love sock puppets because you can get really expressive with a really simplistic puppet, and we can get into this more later, but you don't need a very expensive or fancy puppet to do your thing. This was also something from a very long time ago that I did. I did not build this puppet, but this is Insomniac, which is a sort of EDM rave culture thing. This is another thing called Catch Me and Run, or Catch It and Run. But I loved playing this guy. This character was a lot of fun. This was for an MTV short film called Myrna the Monster, and I assisted a puppeteer named Victor Yared on this.
Oh, yeah.
And so I was the assistant. Here we have a Dirty Heads music video called "From My Sweet Summer," and I was assisting Victor on this one with the puppetry. I did not build this puppet. So oftentimes, you're going to be. This was for Epics. They were redoing a scene from Dread with puppets to show kind of how violent. This was a PSA for the Truth campaign against smoking. And here we just have another music video. So it's a lot of, as a puppeteer, you're doing a lot of little random jobs all the time. And sometimes you're just performing the puppets. Sometimes you're building the puppet and performing the puppets. Like this one was, I think I forget what this was even for SourceFed or something. But essentially this woman's bosoms began to... sing like opera singers in the park, and it's a sketch sort of deal. But so building puppets, you never know what the person on the other line is going to want. They're going to call you up and be like, "Oh, hey, we need some singing breasts with creepy teeth this week," and it's like,
yes, it's a challenge every time, So yeah.
So there's no limit to creativity then.
Yeah, that's part of what I love about building puppets is you can create these characters that, like you said, there's no limit to the creativity, and then they can exist in real space with people. So that's sort of, we have the limitation with puppets because, of course, they're not going to be able to move in the same way as computer-generated characters. But CG characters can't, sit in a room with you. So in terms of live theater and these live theatrical experiences, puppets are really powerful. And then also in an educational context, they can be really powerful as well to help kids learn about concepts. And there's a lot of research as to how young children with that are on the autism spectrum, they do really well with puppets. So it's a cool communication tool for a lot of people.
So in your trailer, I saw some puppet with a cord, a string.
Yeah.
So are you doing this also?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I didn't build those puppets, but it's a marionette style is what we say. And so that is puppets with strings from above, like Pinocchio. That's a marionette. And I don't specialize in that. I have worked in marionette style from time to time, but generally I do what is called hand and rod puppetry. So here we have a hand and rod puppet. And the hand part is because your hand is in the head of the puppet. And then it's a rod puppet because these arms here are on what we call rods. So you're controlling these with your other hand. So for example, you're puppeteering this character. If I was assisting you, I would have, another arm and be, working that as we make the character have a moment there. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, great.
So what does it entail to build a puppet like that? Can you tell us a little bit about more the craft of creating, designing, and creating basically a puppet from scratch?
So it can come from many different directions. Sometimes the idea for the character is coming from a client. So the client is going to come to me with a very specific idea of what they want. Either they have a picture or they want a specific animal. They might want a flamingo or something, for example, and they say, okay, give us your version of a flamingo. So from there, either they're going to have a drawing that they give to me, or I'm going to produce some art in some way and then get them to give the thumbs up before we actually start building the physical object.
Yeah, so you do like a demo or,
And so what I've been using for concept art in the past year is actually artificial intelligence tools, which has helped me so much. So I'll use an AI art creation tool to come up with these images. And, it's not, I'm not just hitting one button and going, a lot of curation and a lot of editing and forth, but I do find that within a very short amount of time, I can give a high quality image to a client that then they can sign off on and I can get started on the actual build of the project. Other times when you're building a puppet, I prefer to improvise a puppet. For example, this puppet right here is essentially improvised. Now, I didn't know what she was going to look like when I started. I started making this shape right here, which I knew was going to be a sort of sock puppet thing, and then I dyed it a certain color, not exactly sure what color it was going to come out, and I heat treated the fur. And then this puppet actually as well, I improvised. So you start building and you don't know where it's going to end up, but every choice along the way is defined by the materials and it's inspired by what looks best. So oftentimes when I'm trying to reach a design that someone else has made, it's like, oh, I'm not quite there. But when you're improvising a puppet, it is exactly what it's supposed to be in the end. Right. So I find that that's a better recipe for like greatness. For example, what we're looking at in the image.
Yeah,
right
I have
here.
some pictures. So yeah.
So this is a totally different style of puppet. This is a wooden. Little wooden puppet that's going to be hand carved that I actually ended up making. So this is a style developed by a puppeteer named Bernd Ogrodnik. He's Icelandic, I believe, and I took a class where I learned how to do this. So here we have the front view and the side view of the character. So when I'm doing the wood carving, I know exactly what I want the shape to look like from each of those perspectives. So having a good design, especially when you're working with a material like wood, and when there's, you can see in this image here, the arms and the legs, they have very tight tolerances, and you want them to be able to move in a specific way. So having a very accurate and clear design is super helpful when you're working with a material like wood like that. But each puppet is different, and they each present their own challenges. Oftentimes, not often, but less and less the more I keep making puppets, is sometimes you'll start a puppet and you'll make it and you'll get like almost done and you'll say, oh, this is not it. This isn't great. So you'll have to start over. And one time I had to build a puppet 4 or 5 times until both myself and the
because
client
it's
were happy.
art and creation and idea, and it's like music. We are in music industry.
Exactly. You can write a song.
Yeah,
It's
it's not what I had in my mind.
Yeah. So I'm at a point in my puppet building career where I can tell a client, listen, I promise you I can make you a good puppet. It might be a great puppet, but I can't promise a great puppet because that's the magic. That's the ineffable thing that just sort of happens sometimes. And, your batting average goes up the more you start to learn these techniques, and the more you refine your personal style, and you sort of learn what works and what's not going to work as you go. And, I'm not saying that I've done a lot of great things, but I'm very proud of a couple of the designs.
Of course,
that
yeah. So before to go further, I have some...
We got some comments.
Yeah, comments.
Hey.
Yeah, from Fanny. Hi, Fanny.
Thank you, Fanny.
And we have another comment, but it's in French, which means the best is Jean-Marc. Do you know Jean-Marc? So I'm not sure you know Jean-Marc. Jean-Marc is a famous puppet in France. But it's very ironical and stuff like this,
Yeah.
So maybe I will show.
Sarcastic, you mean?
Yeah.
I'll have to check it out.
Dry sarcasm.
Yeah.
I know the Guignol in France. They do some really
Guignol,
interesting.
that was
Guignol, yeah.
Yeah, it's just wonderful political commentary and social, cultural stuff. It's a really cool tradition.
They're coming from Lyon, which I was born.
Oh, nice.
Thank you for plugging this shameless homage to your city, Philippe.
Okay, let's go to another picture. So this is the same, the same category, I think.
Exactly. So this is the finished product of the design that you just saw.
Yeah.
This looks really complicated, by the way, to carve that.
It takes time. That took me about 2 weeks of work.
Yeah,
but
I can
it's because
tell,
I was using no power tools, except I used a power drill. But everything else was carved by hand, and that was my first one, so it took me longer than probably the future ones did not take as long to make that particular style.
And since we're talking about that, what kind of wood is that?
So it's a type of wood. Man, I think it's called basswood.
Basswood, they make guitar out of it.
Lindenwood is another name for it. But anyway, it's a really great soft wood carving wood. And if you're into wood carving, there's a lot of great resources online to teach techniques for that.
And is there any sets of materials that you prefer to use when you do puppets, like Cleo? And this is Cleo with the big hair and Richie.
It's funny. I'm sort of a materials nerd. So yes, the materials are. If we look at this puppet right here, this is a special type of fleece called Nyla fleece, which you can't just go into a store and buy anywhere in Los Angeles. You have to special order this stuff, and this type of fleece has gone through many iterations over the years. So for example, on her nose right here, it's difficult to tell on the camera. It's very similar to the Nyla fleece, but this is called old school Antron fleece. So that's the good stuff that they stopped making in 2006. And it's kind of similar to this stuff. Now the advantage of using fleece like this is it's very easy to hide the seams when you're sewing a puppet. So, for example, this puppet here, you can sort of see it, but she does have a seam going down the front of her face.
Oh, yeah.
But it's not something you would immediately notice.
No,
And so it's a very useful thing when you're making a puppet to be able to sew it in a way that you're not going to see seams in the middle of the characters' faces. So yeah, the materials are super important. These are all different types of fleeces in her hair. This is a custom fur, and I think it's like, because it's a very tangible art form, you almost want to have something that it's like, oh, I want to touch that, you know? So yeah, and then, you know, I'm using a specific type of rubber in the mouth. For me, building puppets also goes in line with, so I'm a vegan person, so animal rights is very important to me.
Yeah.
So I strive to not use any materials that were derived from animals in my puppet building. So that's a very important material question for me as well. For example, this puppet has faux felt on the inside of the mouth, which is essentially a plastic type of thing, but real felt would be made from wool, which comes from sheep, and there's ethical concerns involved with the production of that. So yeah, the materials are super duper important to me, and I can talk about materials all day. It's one of my favorite things.
Is there any stores where you can buy those materials, or you have
So I
like
have other picture if you want also.
Yeah. So we're looking at a strop right now and a chisel. So that's for wood carving again. And that strop right there I made out of denim. And most of the time strops people will use are made out of leather. So that's another example of how I'm finding just a simple substitute. And what that strop is used for is to keep your knife sharp and honed. Because if you have a very sharp knife, it actually is safer to be carving with than something that's dull that you might have to put too much force and it's going to slip.
Yeah.
But anyway, there are some shops here in Los Angeles if you're into fabrics. For example, this fur right here came from a shop down in the Fashion District. There's a shop called Michael Levine, and within a sort of 2-block radius of Michael Levine in the Fashion District downtown Los Angeles, you can find all sorts of great materials. The rubber comes from a shoemaking supply store called Sederma. The fleece I special order online. There's so many different resources. Most of the good fleece resources are going to be things that you're ordering from online. Foam is a very important thing. Now, you don't want to just use regular furniture foam because that's going to break down over time. They have a special type of foam called reticulated foam or Scott foam that's coated in a specific thing that is meant for like outdoor furniture. But anyway, it works very well for puppetry. So the materials is so important. And oftentimes, even if you're a great puppet builder, if you're not using the best materials, you're not going to be able to achieve a great looking result. So sometimes I'll see younger or sort of aspiring puppet makers online. And oftentimes you do just have to use what you have to use. But I always say to puppet makers who are up and coming, it's like, listen, if you have a seam in the center of the face because you don't have the right type of fleece, and that's the only type of fleece you have, do it intentionally. You know what I mean? So like, make sure that seam is right in the center. You know?
You wanted to do this.
Exactly.
create a scar.
Yeah, exactly. Because, you know, anybody can, and I used to do this in my puppet making. I'd be like, well, it's okay if we see some seams because they're puppets. And now that's true. Sometimes you want to make that choice to see a seam on a puppet, but you want it to be a choice. You don't want it to be the only thing you know how to do.
Oh, so you okay? That's a sew. And,
I just
Okay,
we sew the sew.
a block of basswood.
Exactly. So that's a step in the process of, you can see that I've traced the pattern of the head, the front view and the side view. And then in the next one, that was just a hand-carved, improvised head that I sort of made. That was a study for what I ended up actually making on the final puppet there.
Wow, that's a lot of precise work with the chisel. I mean, that must be so difficult. I would have cut my hands off 10 times.
Yeah, I cut myself a few times learning. And they have special gloves. And the thing that I learned about these special carving gloves is they're very good at preventing you from slicing your hand, but when you stab, they don't really help with that. Anyway, I survived. But
It was cool to learn that stuff. Any university or any ways to learn that stuff, other than being an apprentice with a master, or how do you learn that stuff?
So there's a lot of different online resources that'll teach you some techniques. There's a great person named Adam Krutinger. He does this thing called Puppet Nerd, and it's a great resource. And he's moving forward, and he's actually. He used to teach people to decorate puppets with feathers, but he's moving away from that, and that's really inspiring because that's been a big we can talk about the pressure campaign that I've used about puppets and feathers. But anyway, there are some university programs that are going to teach, but a lot of it is just trial and error. You know, if it's an art form that you really love, you're going to get out there, you're going to make a puppet. Your first puppet is probably not going to look good or work well or anything like that, but just keep at it, and the more you make, the easier it gets, and the better they look.
How old were you where you started creating puppets and designing them?
I was about 17 years old when I really started, but then I took a bit of a break and I started again in my mid-20s. And the reason I started again is because I started working with the Jim Henson Company doing an improv show called Puppet Up. And I needed a practice puppet because on-camera puppetry is pretty challenging, as you're seeing. You know, getting the puppet to look in the right direction. Yeah. You got the arm rods up and expressing with the puppet. So I needed a practice puppet. And I started to ask some people in the puppet community who I knew, hey, can you help me make like a practice, something like this, right? And this one guy was like, yeah, sure, $1,000. And I was like, you know, that's a little out of my price range. So what I did is I went online and I started learning how to make puppets in a more professional way. And, you know, so eventually I got to the point where I was making puppets so much that people started to call me up and say, hey, I know you make puppets. Can you make a puppet for my short film or for my commercial or for my web series? And that's sort of how I got started as a professional builder.
Right.
Cool.
So we talk about creating, designing a puppet and making it real. But there's also the artistry of it, the performance aspect, which I guess is just as important as the rest of the puppets.
Certainly, yeah. It's the more
acting
than half
side of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have also some.
Great.
We can see this.
So this is from a music video. This is behind the scenes from the Sheepdogs, and I'm not puppeteering here, but I built the puppets, and I didn't puppeteer on this because I'm a union puppeteer, and this was a non-union production. Sure. So I can work as a builder, but not as a performer because I'm in SAG. Mm-hmm. Anyway, we have a wonderful puppeteer here, and what we're seeing is he's working on a green screen and he's looking at a monitor. So when you're puppeteering for TV or film, you are watching what the camera is seeing as you're performing. If you're doing puppetry and you're not looking at what the camera is seeing, that is not the recipe for success with puppetry. So you really want to be able to see.
Yeah, to control and
because oftentimes what's happening in physical space is not going to be the same thing as what's happening on camera. As you saw right there, I'm sure you were looking at the monitor to see. So the more you practice with it, and the difficult part about that is, like, if I'm looking at the screen right now, in my brain, I'm looking at the screen and I want my hand to go to the right on the camera. Yeah. Now, if I move it to the right in real space, it's going to go to the left. Watch. Yeah. Oh, but so if I want it to go towards this way,
I told you there's a problem with the screen, Philippe.
So anyway, it's reversed. You know, left is right.
You could
right
do
is
that
left.
with the report now.
Exactly. So if you're doing puppetry and your character's right here and someone enters from the other side, you want to look in the right direction because it just has to be this thing, this second nature. So it does take a lot of practice and muscle memory to. But anyway, we're gonna see Joe here, doing some music video puppetry. And so, obviously, if you're into film, you know how green screens work. But essentially, the background is going to be replaced. Everything that's green, we're not going to see. Okay, now here we.
So that was a hippie puppet.
Yeah, that was one of the band members.
Okay, I see. Oops.
Yeah, well, they're kind of a hippie type band. They're a Canadian band called the Sheepdogs. If you don't know them, they rock. You got to check out the Sheepdogs.
All right.
I have this also. So this is a skeleton, we can say.
Skeleton? No.
So this is the insides, basically. The bare bones. And what we're looking at is a mechanism right now we call a blinking mechanism. So with my two middle fingers there, every time I press them down, the eyelids are going to come down, and that's going to let the character blink. And you're also seeing the mouth palette. So it's going to go into a puppet like this, not this particular puppet, but this puppet eventually to express itself through blinking and having its eyes half open and half.
And there was something below the mouth. I'm not sure what that was, though.
So under the mouth, that's a little thumb loop. So essentially what that allows you to do, you want to have a good grip on your puppet, and when you open and close it, you don't want it to be falling off of your hand. So that it's sort of like you want it to fit like a comfortable glove as you're working with it.
Cool.
Thanks.
Wow, that looks complicated.
Yeah. Now I didn't. That mechanism is a 3D printed mechanism that I actually ordered online, and I worked that mechanism into the mouth plate, and I built the glove that it attaches with. So 3D printing is really great. A lot of eye mechanisms right now are coming out through that process.
Cool. Great.
So where can we see you perform? Because I understand you have a gig at Universal as well.
Yeah, so I work with the dinosaurs at Universal, and technically the dinosaurs are real dinosaurs. They're not puppets. But anyway, if you want to come see me work with some real dinosaurs, I do work at Universal from time to time down in Hollywood.
The small ones that bite you from every angle.
Exactly. We have a very vicious baby velociraptor, and she can be pretty dangerous from time to time.
Are they anti-French?
No, they're very welcoming to all different cultures and ethnicities. Yeah.
And while we're talking, we just see
Okay.
all the puppet you did.
So we
not
just
all,
saw,
but a part. You know?
That Inuit character was from a show called Fairy Tale Theater 18 and Over that we actually brought. We've done in LA for over 10 years. It's a brilliant show written by a friend of mine named Michael Feldman. We brought it to Scotland. Here we're seeing Witchy. We saw a little elephant puppet. We have a penguin that's from Fairy Tale Theater 18 and Over. So sometimes I'm just like, I don't know if you've ever had a day or a week where you don't know what you're going to do, where you're just like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do today. Well, the fun thing about being a puppet maker is sometimes you have a closet full of supplies and a whole day to do nothing. And at the end of the day, you can have a pretty cool looking puppet. So it's sort of fun to do that and to just, I really like puppetry because it's a good marriage of physical arts, like performing arts, and visual arts, like just designing things. And so what you can do is you can design this character that then you can give a personality to, and you can have all these experiences. Now, this was Woodstock from the Peanuts, Charles Schultz, and I built this for Knott's Berry Farm. They were doing a show called Woodstock. This is for a Meta Quest commercial. Facebook, their Quest VR headset. We did a Super Bowl commercial, and I worked with a group called the Character Shop on that. This is Larry. Yeah, he's a rabbit. He's the same style as Cleo here, but this is for a buddy of mine named Skyjack Morgan who does vegan activism. We have an octopus puppet that I originally built for a project that never happened, but then I just got a puppet. This is a man named Sid Croft, who's like the grandfather of puppetry. He's created a lot of really great shows.
It is happening that when you see someone on the street, sometimes do you think, oh, I have to do a puppet in the style?
You have to render him into a puppet.
Yeah, usually it's with like celebrities that I appreciate. Like I want to build a Frank Zappa puppet someday. Generally with animals, I'll be like that. I need to make a puppet out of that ferret or out of a what's the animal I want to do? A possum. I really want to make a possum puppet.
Possum, yeah,
because they're cute, they're little, and I always think like for example, there's a beaver. When you're a puppet maker, you're always thinking like, how is my hand going to fit inside that head in order to make it work? Sometimes you are using a mechanism to make it work. Here I am protesting in front of the Jim Henson Company because we have a pressure campaign to get them to drop feathers in puppetry. This is that mechanism that we were looking at earlier, the eye blink.
Right.
And here we can see the character's posing with his eyes halfway shut. Here we have, this is an example of some faux feathers. So those are not real ostrich feathers on that character's head. And this was just a test I did. Witchy and her sister, Tildy.
Oh, she has a sister.
Matilda, that is her sister.
Very
what
red.
a family.
Very red.
She's got a bunch of sisters. So that's
the guitarist.
Again, yeah, that's the bass player from from that Sheepdogs music video. And that's the guitar. So we actually built a talking guitar for that music video. So
the mouth is moving.
Yeah, the mouth can open and close.
Cool.
This is Stan Lee, and I built him for a show on YouTube called Epic Rap Battles of History, which is hilarious if you haven't had a chance to check it out.
Do you have to ask from copyright or when you do?
For this, I think they were doing a parody of this individual. So under U.S. law, if you're doing a parody, you can use someone's likeness like that.
Yeah.
But as far as I'm concerned, they're just hiring me to build a puppet that sort of looks like this, and then if they want to use it, they've got their own legal team that can tell them,
I was just wondering,
this is a good question, though. There's sometimes people will come to me and they'll say, hey, can you build me a Kermit the Frog, or can you make me a Fraggle? And I always say, I'm sorry, I can't, because I see it as someone else's work, and if I were to just copy someone else's work, that would be a form of plagiarism.
Okay. Yeah.
So I always say to people, if you really want a Kermit, go out and learn to build a puppet. Make yourself a Kermit the Frog. Maybe you can find another builder who's going to do that. But me, I like to make, even like we're looking at Stan Lee right
or you
here.
can buy Kermit. the
Yeah,
Frog.
you can buy a Kermit puppet.
They did it.
You know, that's
Yeah.
Stan's likeness there, but it is it's a version of him that I kind of created. I didn't copy anything to make that.
Yeah.
I looked at him and I made a puppet version of him.
Right, and he's a
Cool.
human, not a trademark, puppet, a creation.
Yeah.
That's a big difference also,
Yeah.
legally speaking. All right, that's awesome.
Yeah.
You talked a little bit about animal rights. Can you tell us a little more about what you're doing and the campaigns that you're bringing up front and what it means to you?
Certainly. So I was working at the Jim Henson Company before I was even a vegan person. And for you all watching right now, if y'all don't know what vegan means, it means that I totally avoid anything that comes from animals. So, for example, I don't eat meat, but then it goes beyond that. I don't eat eggs. I don't drink milk. I don't use leather, feather, fur, wool. So there's all sorts of different considerations. I don't go to the circus. I don't go to zoos, because what I see is in the vast majority of the instances where humans are using animals in some way, the animals are being exploited, and the rights of the animals are not. They are secondary to the preferences and wants of the humans.
They almost don't exist. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a growing movement in our world right now. It's really exciting to see people all over
Yeah,
the
because
world.
now circus you do.
Yeah.
There is still circus with animal because
Oh yeah.
you know, yeah.
It depends. In
It's big in
certain
Europe.
Yeah,
yeah?
in certain places they're dropping it. I did see a circus act in Belgium where they actually had dinosaurs, but the dinosaurs were big robots, and then the actual show, there were no real animals. It was a clown show, and there was some dancing and some acrobats and things like that. But anyway, working with these puppets at the Jim Henson Company and becoming vegan, I suddenly saw them differently. And instead of just seeing like a cute, beautiful puppet, suddenly I would look at the hair that was decorating these puppets, and I saw the feathers, and I was acutely aware that in order to get these feathers, some pretty uncomfortable things had to happen, and that's just a reality that adults understand. You know, we when we eat meat, it comes from a certain place, but a lot of the time we aren't always honest with ourselves about the uncomfortable aspects of that, and so for example, there's a bird on Sesame Street called Big Bird that's just giant, covered in turkey feathers, and a big theme of that show is kindness. So I sort of I decided that I was no longer comfortable working on shows where they had feathered puppets. This was my way of saying, you know, I'm going to take a stand for what I believe in, and of course it's not the easy thing, but I felt it was the right thing, and so I spoke with the people who I had been working with at Henson, and I sent them an email. I said, hey, listen, I'm not comfortable doing this, so I'm not going to be able to continue working on this show, but I've been developing alternatives, which is something I've been doing for a couple of years now, and so let me show you what I've got. Let's work together to move forward in a better way. And they kind of ghosted me. They didn't really respond to me at all, and so that was kind of disappointing for me. And what I realized is I'm running up against tradition, because the Jim Henson Company right now is owned and run by Jim Henson's family. Jim died in 1990, so when you have someone who created this huge thing, the Jim Henson Company, who hasn't really been there for the past almost 30 years now, it's difficult to move forward from what was happening when he did die. And I do think that if he was still around right now, it would be more likely that we'd be able to move past it. But I hear a lot of the time, you know, using these real feathers that's the tradition. That's the way we've always done it. That's, if we want to be authentic to this art, we have to use feathers. So it's a real interesting conversation, and it's a bit of a reckoning in the industry. I think a lot of these people haven't, if they've thought about it, maybe they haven't thought about it to the level of detail that I don't know. Maybe everybody disagrees with me, and I'm not right. But what I do find is most of the time when I do talk to just a random person about this, they're surprised that the feathers being used are not synthetic. They're surprised that they're real feathers. So I think we can use synthetic. I think we should, or we should start being a lot more honest about what's happening. You know, because if Sesame Street was a show that was teaching kids about how animals are processed, that would be a pretty shocking less to say about it if they were being honest in that way. So it's an interesting thing. You know, it's a show for 3-year-olds. I don't think we should be honest with them about what slaughter is, but then maybe we shouldn't be using these materials to teach those lessons either.
Okay, I don't want to make a polemic, but do you think they use the feather and they kill the bird for this? Or
Well, so
because you see what I mean.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
If it's a dead bird,
Yes.
why not taking the?
So that's a common idea, and so the idea is that we're using these that were from the meat industry, and the idea is it's going to be used anyway, so we're going to just waste it, and so then the next question is, okay, we're using these feathers from the meat industry, but do we even need to be eating this meat in the first place? Because we know right now nutrition means that we don't have to be eating animal products in order to be healthy. So the question becomes, well, what is the justification for causing this harm to these animals? And also the idea is they're not just byproducts, these feathers, they're actually called co-products with the meat industry. So the meat industry's goal is to make money, and if they can make more money by selling feathers, that doesn't mean that they're a byproduct. Suddenly they become a co-product, and it allows the industry to continue to operate.
And most probably some animals are going to be raised just for that purpose.
Exactly, and they're going to be raised in certain ways to preserve their feathers.
Right, yeah.
And,
Like they're doing when they do leather or jackets and leather goods. It's basically like that. They are raised for that purpose. The leather is not coming from cows that are being slaughtered for meat.
Exactly. So it raises some really interesting questions, and it brings up a conversation that's not always comfortable and that people aren't always willing or ready to have. But I do think with climate change and the climate emergency, it's more and more important that we do consider these things, and we try to, if we care about the rights of these animals, we're going to totally eliminate our use of them. But if we're caring about the environment, we need to drastically reduce our use of them, even on that level.
Yeah. Can you tell us more about Kindness Town? You mentioned that a little bit earlier, and I was curious about what that means.
So Kindness Town is sort of a reaction to this whole thing, the idea that Sesame Street would be using these materials to teach these stories of kindness. So I thought, what if there was a puppet show where these puppet characters who have these good values, what if they, and Cleo, by the way, she's going to have, when we film Kindness Town, she's in Kindness Town, she's going to have real ostrich feathers on her hair, and that's something that I don't do when I build my puppets. But the question I had, what if these characters learned what their hair was made out of during an episode and decided to change their materials so we can see the whole catharsis in that one little episode? And so that's what we're doing with Kindness Town. It's a musical. We've got people from around the world working on it. We've got some voiceover artists in New York City who are Broadway people just doing amazing work. And so it's a great team, and I think it's going to be a really impactful story.
Do you have any release date or any more information about the production process and when that's going to be, where, how can we see it? And
so it will be released online. If you want to check Jess McKay Puppets on Instagram, you're going to find more information about that. We also have @KindnessTown on Instagram where you're going to find more info. We hope to have something. Right now, there already is stuff you can go see about Kindness Town on that Instagram page, but we hope to have the actual thing recorded and released by, I want to say, early 2024. So that's like 2 or 3 months from now.
Yeah.
We're gonna be getting that released. Yeah.
all right, good luck for that.
Thank you.
Cool, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Right, that sounds exciting.
Thank you.
All right. Do we have any more?
Yeah, I have the Rembrandt.
Oh, the ant.
So
Rembrandt.
Rembrandt, the
so
ant.
we can see it. I mean, and you can explain us.
So this is
what
another
is
one
it
of those
about?
improvised puppets. I did not know what Rembrandt was going to be until he was about almost all the way built. His eyes there are knobs from IKEA dressers that I spray painted black.
Oh, wait.
We communicate through chemical signals.
So you're doing everything?
So yeah, I'm doing the voice and the puppetry by myself here, and my lovely wife Fanny is filming me. And this was for so Fanny actually built Sassy here. I'm still doing the puppetry, but Fanny built and designed that character. So we work together in the puppet building stuff. She's a wonderful. Her grandmother was a seamstress, so she has a lot of sewing skills that she learned, and she's also a great artist. So, we worked together on that. But this was a sort of music video. I don't know if you want to turn the sound down. You might get flagged for the copyright for the sound. I don't want you to do that on Instagram. Anyway, this was for an audition that we did some sort of reality show, a couple that didn't end up even happening. A lot of fun to build character and to make Rembrandt. And he's actually also going to be a character in Kindness. We've written a pilot called Rembrandt and Rose that is going to star Fanny and this puppet. So that's another thing that we're sort of thinking on, and it's the cool thing about puppets is, like, if you're an actor, you have your own body and you're stuck there, no matter what. If you look a certain way, you're going to have to play a character who looks a certain way. But with puppetry, you can play almost anything, and that's pretty fun.
But then you have to change the voice also.
Certainly.
At the beginning, you're not voiceover and doing a lot of different voices.
Well,
but
there's an acting dimension that is just as important as the rest, I guess.
So, if we're talking about voices, my arm's all messed up. Anyway, this has got a bit of a different voice, everybody. What's going on? My name is Witchy, and Jess is doing some terrible puppetry because he's sitting behind a desk. My arm is stuck on this. Anyway, I do use a different voice when I play this character because, it just makes it a little bit easier. Sometimes with the voice comes a way of thinking. Well, you want to fight me?
Yeah.
I'm not a fighter. I'm a lover.
Oh.
May I? Oh, there we go.
So cute.
My head is on his shoulder. I don't know if y'all saw that. We just had a bit of a moment. This is make love, not
sorry.
war. That's what I want to say to everybody in the Middle East. Y'all just make love to each other.
You can go on the.
Oh, there we go. Here, everybody, what's up in L.A.? I'll tell you what's up right now. A hand in my butt. Anyway.
You used to, no?
I'm very used to it. It's a tradition in my family.
Which is very sarcastic, as we can tell.
She just, she rolls with the punches. Sometimes literally, I get punched at least once a week.
Okay, cool.
Anyway, so that's one voice. I've got sometimes I was doing a show for years called Puppet Up, which is an improv show. So you're making things up as you go, and oftentimes you're creating the character on the fly too. So you'll pick a puppet up, and sometimes you don't even know which character is going to come out until you start talking. And sometimes it takes a couple minutes at the beginning of the scene to find that character. Sometimes you're just locked right into it. But it's always helpful as a puppeteer to have a couple characters in your back pocket, just someone who you can bring out that personality.
And when you build a puppet, do you have already the voice in your head, or
sometimes? Rarely for me. Generally, I go with the physical look of the puppet, and then the voice comes afterwards. For example, with Witchy, I was performing this character for about a month before I really found her.
Oh yeah.
I was doing live streaming online. So if you go back and look at some of the very early stuff from her, she's got a slightly different personality and voice, and
Cool.
Yeah.
Do they have like specialized voiceover for puppets, or there would be like a subspecialty?
So that's interesting. Some puppeteers don't do voices. Some puppeteers, for example, like I don't want to say just a marionette puppeteer, but there's a lot of puppeteers who will work the puppets but who won't perform the voices. Some puppeteers are voiceover people first, and then they'll do puppetry. For example, there's a show called Avenue Q on Broadway, and when they cast that show, it's a puppet show, but you see the actors on stage, and most of the time when they cast somebody for that show, they're casting a musical theater actor who they're teaching to become a puppeteer.
Okay, and not the way around. Okay.
Yeah, instead of the other way around, because oftentimes it's very important when you're in a Broadway musical that you have a wonderful voice, and the puppetry is something that maybe is a little bit easier to fake it until you make it sort of situation.
Right.
Yeah.
It sounds like you need to have a strong improvisational sense, like you need to be ready to improvise at any time with
I think so. I think for puppetry especially, I do hold that value.
It's like jazz almost.
Exactly. It's like jazz. I think it's important just in life in general to be able to improvise.
Right.
And whatever comes is like, well, that's what we're doing now.
Right.
But I did study improv for many years here in Los Angeles
right.
at the Groundlings
It's
Theater.
not like you can, maneuver a puppet and puppeteer a puppet and read a script at the same time.
Oh, you can? That's one of the great things about being a puppeteer is, so for example, when I'm doing puppetry, there's a screen in front of me, so I'm seeing what the camera's seeing. But then I can just tape, if I can borrow this for a second, I can tape the script right onto the screen, so my lines are right there.
Okay.
So oftentimes it's easier to sort of cheat and not have to learn your lines as a puppeteer.
Short-term memory.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, did you ever try to do, I don't know the word in ventriloque?
A ventriloquism. I've tried. It's not my thing. I've never really tried in artist. So it's interesting. Within puppetry, there's all these little shadow puppeteers. Or we have ventriloquists. We have the string puppeteers. We have Hand and Rod who do voices. So even within the puppetry world, it's rare that you're going to have someone who's going to be very good at every single style.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's some really great ventriloquists out there. I wish I could do it because those people make a lot of money doing shows in Vegas. And yeah, certainly that might be a skill for me to invest in. But man, I'm so judgy about it because it's so not cool because a lot of people look at me and they're like, oh, you're a puppeteer, and they immediately have all these judgments in their head. But even as a puppeteer, I have judgments about other styles of puppetry. I'm like, oh, ventriloquism? No, that's not cool. No. But anyway, if whatever your art form is, whatever you love to do, you should go ahead and keep doing that. Even though I just said that about ventriloquists, I love you. Keep doing it. I love ventriloquism sometimes, and keep it up.
Of course, yeah.
And you mentioned you were in the union, and under which category?
So I'm in SAG-AFTRA, which is the actors union, and they just they consider us the same as they do an actor essentially. Right. There's a couple different little things, but when we go on a contract for a show, it's essentially the same process as getting hired as an actor for a show. I'm also a member of a union called AGVA, which is the American Guild of Variety Artists, and that's for live performances, like at the theme park, for example.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, because you're working in Universal Studio. I don't know if
with live dinosaurs, by the way.
Yeah, real
ones. We want to make sure people understand that they are real.
Very dangerous.
It's in LA.
It's in LA.
What's up in LA? Real dinosaur.
That's what's up in LA.
And they're funny, actually. They're nice.
Some of them are.
Don't be scared. Don't be scared. They're actually quite nice.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, what would you advise for people who want to do what you do, like young people or?
So you got to remember, with any career in the arts, you got to look at it as a marathon instead of a sprint. So I've been here in Los Angeles since 2005, so that's 18 years ago, and I came when I was 22. I was a young actor. I was hungry, and I just started out in the world, and I've seen so many people in this city come and expect to make it within 1 or 2 seasons. And when they don't make it big, they go back and they're doing their life in some other world. And the cool thing about LA is there are so many opportunities here. Yeah. So if you're coming here and you're just burning out after a year or two and you go back to your small town, you got to remember there's not going to be as many opportunities there, and you might fall into doing something else. And there's no shame in that. That's just, that's life. But if you do want to make it a sustainable career, you have to know, number one, it's a marathon. You're not going to make it immediately, and you have to. It's not even a backup plan, but you have to have the idea that, like, okay, I have to have a job that's going to pay me money in order to live my life so I can make my art. For years here in Los Angeles, I was working as a teaching assistant at an elementary school during the daytime, and then going off and doing comedy and puppet shows at nighttime, just to try to make something happen. And eventually, I got to the point where I found I was saying no to puppetry work because I had to be there for my school job. And I was talking to my wife.
That's not right.
Exactly. I was talking to my wife about it, and she was like, well, Jess, that's the dream. Why don't you just quit your school job? And I was like, well, because that's steady, and I'm getting money every week, and I know. And she was like, no, that's not what you're here for. And so I quit that job in 2015, and that was 8 years ago, and I've been making it ever since then, only doing art stuff. So that's kind of fun. But that, again, it took me 10 years in Los Angeles to get to the point where I could quit my day job and just be working on puppetry stuff.
Yeah.
Which brings my next question. How do you make yourself known? How do you have people?
Because it's a niche, I mean,
so it's interesting. I've certainly burned bridges in my industry because of my activism on this thing, and it's been interesting. I know that I've lost so much work because I've held people accountable and I've been confrontational about that in my industry. But having said that, the best way to get work is word of mouth and working with other people and just being like, well, that was easy to work with him that time. Let's call him again for the next one. A lot of the puppet building jobs I get are just from people who are friends who know that I build puppets, and they recommend me for it. Oftentimes we do have auditions in the puppetry community, but oftentimes it feels like it's just like a formality and they know who they're going to want to hire anyway. And I've been on both sides of that. I've been like, I'm going into audition, but I know they're going to hire me anyway. And I've gone into situations where I go into audition and I know no matter what I do, they're already going to pick somebody else. And So I guess maybe the frustration that a lot of actors have just in this world anyway. If you want to be a successful player, I would recommend make your own stuff, because even if you're an actor, whatever you're doing, because nobody can take that away from you. For example, Witchy here, Kindness Town, these are projects that I've created, and nobody's going to tell me that I can't do it. So it's like, what
Yeah,
do you,
it's yours.
yeah.
Yeah. So when you do your stuff, it's the puppet, but also the concept
Exactly.
around it.
Yeah.
The story of the puppet and yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And now you can do your own show on YouTube or stuff like that. So it's
Yeah.
you can.
So there's
we
a way
do.
to broadcast yourself now a lot more than 10 years ago, for
Yeah,
instance.
I think
for
Certainly.
Sure.
It's a very, very exciting time for that, because, and I always say this to myself, quality, the cream is going to rise to the top. If you go out there and you make really good stuff,
Yeah.
people are going to notice.
course.
Steve Martin, who's one of my favorite comedians, he has a quote, and he says, "Be so good, they can't say no." You know? So it's like, I can't control everything, but what I can control is the quality of what I'm doing and the effort that I'm putting into
Yeah,
what I'm
you're right.
doing.
Yeah, yeah.
So I try to just, try to just do the best you can, and then at least at the end of the day, if you don't make it, you won't be able to blame it on, the fact that you didn't try.
And
No, go ahead.
I have a question because do you think there is less or more puppet now than 20 years or 30 years ago?
Great
Because
question.
with all the IA and
Yeah. So
CGI.
what's happened?
for the longest time, if you wanted to have animated characters on television, there were a couple different options. You could do actual cartoons, which were very expensive,
Yeah.
or you could do a puppet show, which was still sort of expensive, but way
Yeah.
cheaper to produce a lot of content. Now we're living in a time, and since like the late 90s, we've been living in a time where it's cheaper to produce things using CG and computer graphics. So a lot of puppeteers
Yeah.
and puppet people have lost work since then. You know, there were many, many more people working in the industry in the 1980s than there are now. Puppetry's become much more of a niche thing right now. Like if there is a puppet show, you know, in 1985 there were 20 puppet shows on the air, and now we have, you know, maybe one or two or just a special episode here and there. So yeah, it certainly has been impacted by that. AI is going to impact our industry in a huge way, and puppetry is not going to be immune from that. You know, we're very close to a time when it's going to be cheaper to produce, you know, an episode of The Muppet Show using AI than using the real puppeteers. And, you know, if you're a company like Disney with a profit motive, it's like, well, we don't care how we get to the result, you know. So I think more and more we're going to see even more jobs being replaced by it. And so, like I said earlier, the very big value of puppetry is those live experiences, is those, you know,
The connection.
the connection, just
Yeah.
being in the same space.
Yeah.
And especially, again, for young people, it can just be a really magical moment.
Yeah.
Even for us.
Yeah, me too.
The young people that are presenting that show.
Yeah, you know, most
Yeah.
people who become puppeteers had a moment when they were growing up where they were just like, that's magical. For me, it was, I saw a tree at the mall, and I was like a little kid, 4 or 5, and the tree could talk to me. And the tree was talking to me. And as a kid, I was like, how is this possible? For years, I was like, how? You know, I realized later there was probably a video camera and the guy had a microphone or whatever.
Yeah, but it's magic. Yeah, and
Yeah.
of course, yeah.
And talk about Universal with our real dinosaurs. I get people asking me almost every day, is that a real dinosaur? And that's special. That's so cool when you can be a part
How
of that
many
moment.
dinosaurs do you work with at Universal?
So we do trainings with 4 individual dinosaurs. We have an adult raptor, a couple baby raptors,
Yeah,
and
raptors.
a triceratops. Yeah,
Oof.
Wow.
yeah.
Oof, you're good insurance
I hope so. We're always looking for someone new.
in case things get out of hand.
It does. You know, I don't like to think about that, but if it happens,
But they're nice. They're nice.
Yeah.
We've seen them. They're very nice.
I've got my escape plan ready. So
All right.
Cool.
yeah.
So, I want to okay. I want to prepare the end.
Oh, you're getting ready. Okay, everybody, don't pay attention to what's happening behind the scenes right now.
No worries. It's not dangerous.
Nobody's putting puppets on their hands.
So,
Anyway, if anybody has any questions about puppet stuff, I'm always happy to talk it out. Hit me up on Instagram at Jess McKay Puppets. If you'd like to join us in our activism campaign, we have a petition. So if you go to www.change.org/Sesame Feathers, that's going to give you an opportunity to add your name and your voice to this petition. And you can find more information about that whole campaign at Kindness Town, and probably Witch is also Instagram. Let me know what you think about any of the content that we've been making.
Okay, cool. So, guys, thank you. Thank you, Jess.
Thank you, Philippe.
to come on the show.
Go.
And now we can have the both. With where are you? Where are you?
Wrong camera view.
Oh, here we are. Hey,
Yeah,
everybody.
yeah.
What's going on?
No, yeah.
Oh, there
now
we
are. Yeah.
All right.
So,
Are you okay, Cleo? I feel like you might be having a seizure or something.
I'm better here.
There you
I'm
go.
better here.
What are you looking at? What's up?
You're out of sync,
What's
Cleo.
up there?
Oh, there is another one here. Look.
Is there something on the ceiling? What are you looking at?
And I don't know. I'm just trying to say goodbye to everybody.
How do you do? You're talking, but your lips aren't moving. That's amazing.
Yeah. I'm like this.
There we go.
So thank you to come to the show. And yeah, where are you?
I'm
Where are you
back
going?
here.
Oh, okay, cool.
I like to keep things interesting. I go from one spot to the other spot. It's kind of difficult. 'Cause
Like
I'm,
this? Okay.
Sitting at a desk right now. Anyway.
Okay, folks. So
Woo.
thank you for this show. And Jace, see you soon, I hope. And
We'll see you all out there.
Okay, cool. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.